Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. A Heart of Ice and Ash. Episode 15. Chapter 143. Langdon POV. I couldn't believe it. After all the anguish, the despair, and the grief, Kai was alive. He literally stumbled past me, clad in a pair of scrub pants, security guards all over him, before Damien managed to sort out the confusion. I guess the moon goddess has a sick twisted sense of humor, because he woke up in the morgue. I can't help but think to myself, that it's a tad bit hilarious and the least that Kai deserved, for making us all think he was dead. He's in the room with Winter at the moment, and I'm not about to interrupt. She was devastated, we all were, but she was literally begging for death because he was gone. None of us could comfort her. Damien was about the only one who could really get through to her, and I was so lost in my own sadness, I couldn't offer her anything. Drake gently takes my hand, tingles running up my spine. I wipe my eyes for what seems like the 100th time, tears of joy spurting from the corners. I can't believe he's alive, I blurt out again. I could have sworn he was a goner. Should have known he'd find a way to come back. Drake is silent, he's a good listener, but there's also something else, something heavy on his mind. I feel guilty. Ever since we've met, I've not had much time to talk to him, but can you blame me? My head has been awash with thoughts of having to take over as alpha and what I would need to do to keep the pack running. I've barely had time to take a breath, and it's hardly the time to get to know another potential mate. Listen, Drake says quietly. I can understand that right now is not the best time for this discussion. What with Kai being dead? He pauses and frowns, and then coming alive again. I could feel your pain, Langdon, just sitting beside you. But what I really want to know, is if you're willing to give me a chance, or if we should reject this mate bond right now, before we develop feelings for each other. Before it becomes too painful to separate, he murmurs, his eyes dark and piercing, his gaze troubled now. My wolf howls at the thought of separating from Drake, his anguish overwhelming me. He has already claimed Drake and his wolf as his mate, even though I've hesitated, not sure how Damien really feels about all this. Even though he's assured me he's fine, it does change the relationship once again. What is it you want? I say, turning to him, my mouth dry. Once again, a mere glance, and I'm completely overblown with how handsome he is. Tell me what it is? I can't imagine that you thought your mate would be a man instead of a woman. Then again, I could be wrong. It might have been a surprise for me, but that didn't mean it had to be for him. He chuckles, making me stare at him strangely. I've been gay my entire life, he confesses wryly, so it's not a shock for me to be mates with another man. In fact, I'm ecstatic, because it would have been really weird to have been a female. He laughs. Hey, what do you know? It's why Vanessa never really had a chance to use her siren part on me, because I wasn't attracted to women, he said, shaking his head. God, she hated that. He exhaled. She was still your mother. You're not even remotely upset that she's dead, I say tentatively. After all, he did grow up with her and she raised him. He had to have some feelings for her, surely. He shakes his head. She stopped being a mother long ago, when she started to use her powers to kill men for sport, he said. King Axel is the only one who's lasted this long. I suppose she must have really liked him. I did try, initially to warn the men, but they were so far under her spell, they refused to listen or believe me. In the end I gave up. There was a twinge of regret in his tone. He must have really tried to save the men. Why didn't you kill her? I asked, and he looked at me sharply. You saw what happened to all of us back there. With a snap of her fingers, she paralyzed us all completely. I never could get the advantage over her. I fall silent. Vanessa's body had been burnt by the king's soldiers after we had left. Nothing but ash remained, and that had drifted away on the wind. She was definitely not coming back. Thank God. I shuddered. Her power was incredible, but also dangerous. It did make me wonder though, why she seemed to hate men so much. As though there might have been a story to that in her past. Needless to say, I was willing to bet that Drake's childhood had not been a happy one, something he had in common with Damien. Both boys had deserved so much better. Look, I really like you, Langdon. My wolf is in love with you already. I know that you've been with Damien for a good few months now, while you know nothing whatsoever about me, well besides my mother. But I'm telling you something, he says, intensely, I want to be with you. More than you could know. Right now all I feel is shivers down my spine as I talk to you, my whole body is craving for you to touch me. When I'm not beside you, my wolf gets sad or angry, and all I can think about is whether you are okay. I haven't felt like this towards anyone else before, so this is new to me, but I'm not going to hide from it, I'm going to fight. So if you try to reject me, he declares, his eyes blazing, his voice full of fervor, I won't accept it. I digest his words. The passion he invokes in me is so overwhelming that I can't breathe. He wants me. Wants to be with me and Damien. He's not wanting to walk away, he's willing to share. He's so intense, his whole body is practically vibrating beside me. His eyes are narrowed on me and his mouth is open a little bit, he's panting from that speech. He runs a hand through his rumpled hair, never once taking his eyes off me, his arms folding across his chest. His foot taps impatiently, or maybe nervously, on the floor, a steady thudding noise. My heart begins to thump wildly in my chest. My hands go clammy, like it does when I'm with Damien. My breathing goes shallow. My wolf is close to the surface. I can feel him. My hands clench into fists. I'm trying to maintain my composure to the best I can, distantly remembering that we're currently in the waiting room of a hospital. Footsteps sound behind me and I turn my head slightly, Damien coming into view. He sits beside me and I glance at him, still not fully in control. Drake starts to move and without even consciously thinking about it, my hand shoots out, preventing him from leaving. Stop, I say hoarsely, my eyes turning pitch black. You're not going anywhere. Drake gulps and sits back down, his eyes on me. Does he look a little relieved? Did he think that I would still not want him after that speech? Something begins to ignite inside of me. Damien looks at the both of us, perplexed, before a knowing look passes his face. Without a word, he silently gets up and begins to walk away, a small smirk on his face. I barely acknowledge his leaving, my hand still gripping Drake's arm. I don't want to reject you, I growl. In fact, even though I've considered it hundreds of times, I can't bring myself to. I'm drawn to you, just like I'm drawn to Damien, but I'm not stupid. You are both your own person, and I can't treat you both the same. It would be unfair. You each have different personalities. Drake's eyes are glistening now as he bites his lip. God, he's adorable. I awkwardly shift in my chair, feeling a reaction coming from me. I won't be rejecting you, I declare firmly, coming to a decision, which means, Drake, I say, leaning forward and regarding him, my lips curled back, that you're stuck with me and Damien, whether you like it or not. His lips curl into a smile and he leans forward. My hand shoots out and grips him by the back of his neck, startling him slightly as he blinks at me, my fingers twining themselves around his hair. I scoot forward on my seat and then, before he can move, press my lips hard against his. This is no gentle kiss. I'm rough, possessive, and demanding. For a moment he stays still, then begins to reciprocate, a small moan issuing from his throat. He tastes sweet, like honey, my tongue caressing the outsides of his lips as I coax his mouth to open wider, my tongue slowly sliding in and caressing his. It's like a dance, the both of us, tasting and touching our tongues to each other. His small moans and whimpers are turning me on, and I grip the back of his head harder, forcing him to move even closer. I've completely forgotten about our whereabouts, my hand sliding beneath a very willing Drake's shirt, caressing skin as he trembles, sitting there, his legs splayed open. A hand plants itself on my shoulder. Ahem, coughs a very amused Damien as we jolt back, Drake's cheeks flushed in embarrassment. As nice as it is to see that you've come to an agreement, he teases, you might want to remember that we are in a hospital and in a waiting room. I glance around. Several shifters, waiting on their partners to be helped, stare back at us, some with curiosity, others wide-eyed. None have condemnation in their eyes. A little girl points and giggles as I smile at her. Sorry, I mutter, slinking back in the chair. I just couldn't help it. Damien snorts. I've been on the other side of that. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little jealous, he adds, looking over at Drake with a smirk. So I want you to make it up to me later, he purrs. I gulp. So does Drake. Now my mind is a whirl with bedroom possibilities. After all, Drake is going to have to share a bed with myself and Damien. I get excited at the prospect. Sorry bro, Drake mutters, I just needed to know. Damien shrugs. All good. Just so you know, Kai is doing well and Winter's perked right up, now that her mate has come back from the dead. The doctors are going to be discharging her shortly, once they've finished examining Kai, as though he's the most interesting thing they've ever seen. I stretch. Damien swoops in and gives me a peck on the lips. I grin. So I take it that means we are either going back to the castle or home? I ask drowsily. The castle was much closer. But I wanted to go home, and be with my mates. I was willing to undergo discomfort if it meant being back inside my own home. But it would be up to Kai. Damien frowns. I think we should go home, no offense, but I'm not really wanting to go back to the castle. It's up to Alpha Kai, I point out, and whether he would be up for it. He just died, remember, I chortle, he might need to rest some more. I heard that, says a grumpy voice, and my head swivels around to see my best friend standing there, Winter clutching him around the waist with desperation, a wide smile on her face. I jump up and fling my arms around him. I'm so happy you're alive, I gush and then grin, but the morgue. He swats at me and I dodge it. Smart, he mumbles, like to see you wake up in the morgue one day. Anyhow, he says, fixing his eyes on us, Elena behind Winter, I believe it's time to go home. I find myself wanting as far away as possible from here, he says with a shudder, and I won't be stepping foot in a morgue anytime soon. Drake POV. I look around Langdon's house in awe. It's large, to me it's like a mansion, but he assures me that it's quite small compared to the pack house, and I believe him, but it's still impressive nonetheless. Damien has gone to secure us all drinks and Langdon is busy showing me the tour of his place, stopping tracks in the bedroom. I stare at the bed. We're definitely going to need a bigger one, if all three of us are going to share it. Langdon sees where I am looking. I'll get a larger one, he tells me firmly, a small smile on his face. If you're anything like Damien, you probably take up half of it as well. I shrug. Truth be told, I can't wait to feel him next to me, listening to his snores as he sleeps. The big man blinks at me, and goes to turn away, when I stop him. My hand snakes out and I grip his hand, pulling him towards me. He doesn't resist and I press my lips to his, moaning as he takes charge, plundering it, his mouth becoming rough and possessive, his hand gripping the back of my hair tightly. He delves inside and begins to dance with my tongue, his arms beginning to trail down my arms and feel beneath my shirt, my heart hammering wildly in my chest as tingles run down my body. You taste so good, he murmurs, his hand lightly trailing across my abdomen as I suck in a breath. I think I might want to taste something else as well. This time I gasp at the implication, but he just smirks, roughly pulling my shirt up and over my head, his eyes gazing down into mine. Take your pants off, he instructs, his voice hoarse, eyes full of wish and something more, something primal. I hurry to obey, kicking them off rather awkwardly. He drinks in his fill. Relax, he growls. He puts something on his fingers, but stops, bending down to plant his lips on mine, before slowly kissing the nape of my neck. God, it feels incredible, turning me on, my own moans filling the air. My hands caress the back of him, my body writhing in pleasure. I almost can't keep my eyes open, but I want to look at Langdon, his gorgeous body there for me to view and appreciate. He gives a noise, almost purring in my ear. God, you're so sweet right now, he mutters, just touching you is making me go wild and crazy. My wolf wants you bad. Just wait until I take you, he growls. Relax, he orders. I try my best, not easy when you're horny as, and he won't stop touching me. Christ, my whole body is tingling and feels like it's on fire. I'm in sheer heaven and we haven't even gotten to the best part. At this rate, I'm certain he's going to kill me. I can't say a word, feeling the pleasure wash over me. Please, I choke out, I can't take any more. He laughs but stops. I want you, I pant at him, trying to move, Langdon reaching out and stopping me. There's a look of concentration etched on his face as well as a possessive one. Are you ready for me, he grunts, and I nod my head eagerly, bracing myself. He pushes the tip in and stops. Keep going, I cry out, and he pushes a little further. More, I demand, the pain fading. God, please, just push all the way in, I moan. It's incredible, he waits and then, seeing that I'm in no pain, begins to slowly. LT's heaven and it's hell. It's delicious. I can't breathe, I'm in that much pleasure. All my inhibitions have fallen by the wayside, I shriek his name again and again, completely lost in the throes of our love-making. My heart is hammering so loudly, I'm sure it could be heard for miles, as silly as that sounds. He stops and then stares down at me, while I blink up at him in confusion. Get on your hands and knees, he growls, and I move to obey, peering over my shoulder in uncertainty. His eyes are such a piercing black, that it takes me a moment to realize that his wolf has taken control. Without hesitation or warning, this is so much different to Langdon, even at his hardest. He's no longer gentle, taking me to new heights of pleasure as I rock back and forth, meeting him, feeling the power. His hand slaps me, a sharp sting that only adds to the pleasure. Oh God, oh God, oh God, I moan. I'm close, but I don't want it to end. Not when I'm having so much fun. You like that, Langdon? Or rather, his wolf growls. Good. I just can't take any more. It's too much, between him. I feel Langdon, or his wolf, move behind me, his head close to my ear, and then a sharp sting as something sharp pierces my skin. It takes me a moment to realize that he's marked me as his, claimed me just like he claimed Damien. He withdraws his canines and licks the wound, licking away the blood, his own body stiffening. I collapse onto the bed, the same as him, as he too lies beside me. To my utter surprise though, he's not panting anywhere near as hard, and merely looks as though he went for a quick run. I feel like I've run a marathon, my legs feeling like complete and utter jelly. I'm not even sure I could walk to the bathroom right now without toppling over. My muscles are stiff and sore, but I'm absolutely ecstatic at being marked and at the awesome and mind-blowing ex I just had with my mate. I feel a bit more comfortable with the dynamics of the relationship now. I glance down at Langdon, who gives me a peck on the cheek. To my astonishment, as I stare, wide-eyed, there's no way that I can take another round, not when this was my first time. My body just couldn't take it. Langdon, I breathe, I don't think. I trail off, not sure how to phrase it. He sees where I'm looking and smirks. Don't worry, he grins, this time it's not for you. Damien walks in and smirks as he looks at the both of us, not upset in the slightest over what's occurred while he's been gone. No, he growls, I think that might just be for me this time. Winter POV, I don't think I've stopped crying since I've seen that Kai's alive and well. He had quite a story to tell, with the final result being that he made a decision offered to him by the moon goddess. I can't believe it. Part of me is thrilled that he's with me again, but another part of me feels awful that he had to make that sacrifice, to become a hybrid like myself in order to stay alive. I did this to him, but he insists it was his choice to make and he made the right one. The ride home was fraught with tension, my mother sitting in the back seat, silently watching the scenery. Poor King Axel had been left alone, to deal with the aftermath of Vanessa and what had gone on while he had been under her spell. I wish the poor luck, for he had been married to her, for well over a year. You would think he would dislike Drake, having been her son, but he didn't blame the guy in the slightest. He'd been just as much a victim to Vanessa, just in a different way. I guess he's right. Kai's hand rests on mine as we drive, my eyes intent on the window, the music playing in the background from the stereo. His hand feels warm, his fingers tight as he clutches at me, not wanting to let me go. Not that I want him to, not after such an awful scare. For the rest of my life, I will never forget that awful moment of thinking he was dead. My stomach churns, and the nausea I'm experiencing becomes worse. Bile rises in my throat and I swallow, hoping it will stay down, but with no such luck. I groan. Pull over, quickly. He glances at me and immediately pulls the car to the side of the road, as my stomach turns sour. The second the car has stopped completely, I bolt and rush to throw up in a small pile of bushes. Yuck! My stomach heaves and I gasp for breath, continuing to gag. I wipe my mouth with the sleeve of my shirt and grimace. Ugh, I moan, on my knees, Kai suddenly behind me, his hands gripping my hair and holding it up in case I need to be sick again. I'm thankful for the small breeze coming through, it feels somewhat refreshing. Are you all right? Kai asks after a minute, one hand moving to stroke my shoulder softly. Are you getting car sick? He asks nonplussed. I'm incredulous. Surely I can't be experiencing morning sickness so quickly? Then again, was a hybrid pregnancy different to a shifter pregnancy? Then the dawning realization, that any child of mine, would be born a hybrid as well. Would they develop faster? My mind is a whirl with all the possibilities and I feel faint, swaying slightly as Kai grips me hard, trying to force my body to still. I close my eyes and take deep breaths, willing all my thoughts away, focusing on the now. Eventually the lightheadedness and frantic racing of my thoughts dissipate. I'm all right, I finally tell him, awkwardly forcing myself to my feet, his hands helping me to get upright. I guess just being cooped up in the car made me feel a little sick, I admit. Does he even remember the fact he was under Vanessa's spell when we supposedly conceived? His facial expression makes me feel like it's been forgotten and I resolve to speak to him when we get home. Can we hurry this up please? My mother snarls, sounding annoyed. It's dangerous to be on the side of the road, vulnerable like this, she murmurs. I frown at the anxiousness of her voice. She's fidgeting in the car, looking on edge. What did she think was going to happen? When we were so close to the pack. We're coming, I yell back at her, rolling my eyes. God, what on earth was her problem? We couldn't take a few minutes, just to relax a little before getting back in the car, for heaven's sake. I turn and give Kai a hug, sniffing his scent in appreciation. Even being a hybrid, his scent is almost the same, just the slightest difference to him. Unlike me, he has taken to it very well, and seems to be able to access his vampire side without issue. I feel a little envious of that fact. But now, mine is just as easy, so I shouldn't be jealous. I love you, Kai murmurs so much. I would become a hybrid 100 times over, if it means never having to leave your side, he mutters, fingers stroking my hair. I love you, I whisper, feeling my heart thumping wildly in my chest, tingles spreading all over. Never, ever scare me again like you did. I thought I was going to die, from losing you. He exhales and pulls me in tighter. My mother is scowling from her seat. We need to move, she snaps icily. Christ, you can do this when you get home. What is up with your mother? Kai hisses and I shrug. I have no idea what's gotten into her. We reluctantly return to the car. My mother gives a huff, leaning back in her seat and pouting as I change the radio station. Kai starts the car again and raises an eyebrow, giving his own little shrug and pulling back into almost non-existent traffic. We are, after all, using the back roads and in wilderness, sort of. It's not a route that people like to take. Mother, I say quietly, is there something wrong? She glances at me and then adamantly shakes her head. No, we're just wasting time and I want to be in a nice comfy bed tonight, she says coldly. It stings, that she can speak to me so rudely. I try to give her the benefit of the doubt though, perhaps she too, was feeling a bit sick? Maybe she got travel sickness? Kai tightens his jaw, and I can see that he's becoming very annoyed with her, but he says nothing, concentrating on the road and keeping his eyes fixed ahead. I sigh. The tension is very thick in the car now and I feel uncomfortable, watching out the window, my hand automatically reaching over to touch Kai's. He grips it and then relaxes slightly, his jaw unclenching. I smile at him, in an attempt to placate him. Man, your mother has a stick-up, or what? You are so not wrong, Sabriel. She's being so rude. I have no clue what's up with her. Throw something at her and tell her to lighten up. I can't just ditch something at her. It would be just as rude. Might make her think twice about the comments she's making. Or we could, I don't know, push her out of the car while it's moving, then we wouldn't have to deal with her at all. I'm not going to push my mother out of a moving car. Would you be willing to let me take over and do it then? Because I really don't like her, and Winter, I don't trust her, one bit. I think you need to be more cautious. She has an agenda, I'm sure of it. I like to believe the best in people, Sabriel, she's had it rough. So have you. The difference is you aren't acting all right, let it go already, Sabriel. I'll be more cautious around her, happy now? Deliriously so. I try not to laugh at Sabriel, but the image of my mother being shoved out of a moving car, by my wolf, is enough to make me smile and stare at the window. We're running late, Mother snaps, folding her arms like a child. Winter, did you have to stop back there for so long? I turn and stare at her. As far as I knew, we didn't have a timeline to be back. Damien, Drake, and Langdon had gone before us, while we had taken the scenic route. Since when does it matter what time we get back? I ask suspiciously. She flushes. It doesn't, I didn't mean to say that, she stammers. But my radar is up. Something doesn't feel right. Sabriel was correct. We shouldn't have been trusting my mother in the first place. Kai sees my look and pulls over, while I throw open my door and yank Mother's off its hinges as she cowers, slightly beneath me. Kai looks impressed at my strength as I throw the door to the side. I didn't care if we had to run as wolves the rest of the way, I was getting to the bottom of what Mother was up to. She shrinks back. Care to tell me why you want to get moving so badly, or why you are worried we are late? I hiss. My mother shakes her head. I'm just grumpy, Winter, I didn't mean to be. There's nothing going on, she protests, but for once, my ears are picking up deceit in her voice. You're lying, I say quietly, I can hear it. Sabriel warned me, but I wanted to give you the benefit of the doubt. Wanted to believe that you simply wanted to be my mother, but now I know, you're here for a reason, and I want to know what the reason is, I snarl. I'm not lying, she shouts, as Kai grabs the door on the other side and flings it away, you both need to calm down. This must be your vampire side taking over. I grab her and hold her tight on the arm. I want answers, mother, I murmur in her ear as she trembles. Now. She pales. I notice something on the seat where I've just not so politely vacated her from. A cell phone. I didn't even know she had one. Why had she been hiding it? I grab hold of it and flick it open, but everything has been deleted. It's a burner phone, not keeping any information whatsoever in it, deleting it the second that you pressed send. My eyes narrow. Why have you got a burner phone? I snarl, handing it over to Kai, who looks down at it in disgust. Why would you possibly need something like this? Her mouth opens and closes. I grip her harder, watching her wiggle in my grasp, wincing from the pain. Let me go, she snaps. Winter, I am your mother, she says, trying to play the victim. Yeah, right. She might be my mother, but right now I was viewing her with absolute distrust. Kai comes to my side. There's a black truck coming down the road. I sense they are human, but there's a lot of them, he answers. I blink and concentrate, smelling the scent of humans, and a fair few of them approaching at a rapid pace. I also hear the sounds of guns loading. They aren't just ordinary humans, I say as Kai nods, they are hunters. I fling my mother to the ground, watching with satisfaction as she screams out in pain. The only way they would know our location is if mother, dear, gave it to them, which I'm willing to bet she did. My eyes glare down at her. How could you? I spit out, to your own flesh and blood. She gives me a look, one that is scorching and full of contempt. I would never accept a disgusting hybrid as my daughter, she spits out as Kai growls, and the hunters will give me a lot of money for you. You're special, at least to them, she says resentfully. Is money all that matters to you? I scream, unable to believe her audacity. The van gets closer. Mother stands up and smirks. I had to pretend to care, that I was a victim, in order to get you to trust me. When I found out you were a hybrid, it was like all my dreams had come true. I sold Drake, why wouldn't I sell you? I'm not your mother, Winter, I've never wanted to be your mother. You're a means to an end, and a way for me to live a comfortable life. Maybe you should have listened to your wolf more, she sneers, while Kai's eyes begin to turn red. The van stops, and I whirl around, getting Kai's hand, ignoring Mother completely as she rushes towards it. We're going to have to fight, I shout, and he nods. Wolf or vampire? Vampire, he growls, and show no mercy. Winter POV. My rage knows no bounds as my mother takes the opportunity to dart towards a man who is hanging out the back, looking like he's the leader, as he stares at Kai and myself, his black hair tied tight in a ponytail, his blue eyes gleaming in the sunlight. He smiles widely upon seeing my mother, who flings herself into his arms, his men, standing at the ready, their guns upright and pointing straight at us. I flinch. It's hard not to feel disgusted at a woman, your own mother, you might add, betraying you like this. It doesn't even seem to faze her as she hugs the man hard, crying out, Lexus. What a surprise! Turns out her so-called mate, and Jonathan's cowardly father weren't dead. How nice! I see that the both of them, as Mother moves away from him, a smirk on her face. She would get what was coming to her, I promised myself, and I wouldn't be merciful. Surrender yourselves, and we won't harm you, the man called Lexus calls out, his arms folded over his chest. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way," he adds pompously. Does he think we're going to just walk up with open arms and say, "Take me"? If that's the case, the man is clearly delusional. I start counting. There's a dozen men, not counting Lexus and my mother, all holding what appear to be tranquilizer guns. Their aim isn't to kill then, merely to take us out and transport us somewhere else for experimentation or for sale. Hunters don't always kill their prey, they like to study them first, use our blood and other bits to experiment with. We're too open, I mind Link Kai, we're like sitting ducks. He responds instantly as the men wait, their gazes never wavering from us. We need to separate, draw them out into the forest and take them down that way, it's our only chance. There's too many to approach them all at once, one hit with the gun and we're dead meat. He's right, child. You need to go in opposite directions and lure them after you. Most of them are human, besides Lexus and your mother. That gives us an advantage, but we have to be cautious of the tranquilizer darts. Who knows what's in them, but I suspect wolfsbane would be its main component. I agree. I'm going to kill my mother afterwards, Sabriel. I'd do it now, but she's protected by the men. I know, but revenge will be sweet, Winter. No go, Sabriel shouts in my mind, Kai also giving an indiscernible nod, both of us racing to the side as shots sound out. Kai goes to the right, while I race across the left, my vampire side easily outracing them, weaving in and out of the trees, the men behind me cursing as they wasted several shots, darts embedding in trees and landing on the ground. My hair flies through the wind, my body not tiring. I glance around and notice that they are a bit behind, using my claws and sharp nails to help me climb quickly up a nearby tree, my eyes scanning the woods. Good, they've spread out, I observe, not sure which way I've gone. There are 6 of them, so they had split themselves up evenly, the other 6 having gone after Kai, who I hoped was all right. He was relatively new to being a hybrid, but by God, he'd be a strong one. Right now I need to focus on my own safety and survival. There's no sign of Mother or Lexus and I assume they are waiting by the truck, rather than doing the dirty work themselves. My eyes begin to glow red. I hear heartbeats nearby, getting louder as they get closer. 2 men come my way and I wait, tensing my body and preparing myself. I can hear their voices, both sounding annoyed and disgruntled. Could have sworn the vampire went this way, one commented. The other one grunts at him. Keep your eyes open, he says, annoyed. The disgusting hybrid must be nearby. I'm a little offended by their choice of words. My nails dig into my skin for a moment as I wait for the perfect opportunity. They stop right under my tree and I move, throwing myself onto one of them, who falls, stunned to the ground, his comrade swinging around and shooting as I move, slamming my fist into his face as the dart misses, landing with a thwack into the tree I had just jumped from. His comrade doesn't move, and I realize that he's been knocked unconscious, his head hitting a rock as he fell. Good, I move away from the other man who is howling and clutching his face, his jaw broken at least, from the sound it had made when I made contact with it. He splutters and I move my head and grin, relishing at the amount of anger in his voice. I was going to enjoy this. He moves towards me, grabbing a knife from a holster on his pants, brandishing it at me. I raise an eyebrow. Does he think I care about the size of it? He lurches forward and I shift sideways, grabbing his arm and bending it backwards, a loud cracking sounding, his scream loud, giving away our location. I swear and kick his knee, sending him to his knees and then use the knife, still in his hand, bending his arm and cutting his throat, the blood trickling down as his body flops to the forest floor. I hesitate, the blood smells delicious, sweet, and my mouth drools at the thought of tasting it. But I remind myself there are still 4 men to go, and drop the knife, dashing away again as I hear more footsteps. This time it's one guy, and I don't run away too far, but swerve and dart in a different direction, to prevent the others finding me straight away. The guy is huge, broad-shouldered, with slick greasy hair and muscled body. Almost like a heavyweight champion. It's a little unsettling. The smile he gives me as he raises his gun is creepy and unnerving. Time to sleep, he tells me confidently, and I move, running right towards him, darting left and right, the dart missing me by an inch at the most, as I slam my fist into his stomach. He gives a groan, but remains standing, to my utter disbelief. I sniff, he's human, just one that seems to be on something to make him even stronger. An experiment, no doubt. I jump back as he swings wildly, connecting with nothing but air. I'll get you, he snarls, no longer smiling, and who knows, maybe Lexus will let me have some fun with you. I shudder at the thought of this repulsive man getting anywhere near me, let alone touching me. He fires again and I grab the dart in mid-air, my eyes narrowing in on it, my reflexes faster than ever. He gulps. I don't stop, I move, my body slamming into his, jamming him against the tree as I sink the dart into his thigh. I knee him in the nuts, making him let out a strangled gurgle, while I head get him as well, causing his nose to break and to bleed. I give a smile of satisfaction. He doesn't look so cheerful now. Instead, as I step back and regard him, my fangs now out as I smile, he glowers at me, clutching his genitals with one hand, bent double, the other holding his nose as he falls to his knees. What he stammers, and only then seems to see the dart still in his leg, he murmurs and then flops to the floor, his head hitting the ground with a thud, completely knocked unconscious. I pick up his tranquilizer dart and rummage through his pants, finding several darts to load it with. I grin and start to jog, hearing the sound of the last 3 hunters coming towards me. It was time to do some of my own hunting. The other hunters had joined forces and were approaching, their backs to each other, their rifles loaded at the ready as I stayed, behind the tree, my own gun ready to go. Their eyes were intently scanning the forest, their footsteps as quiet as they could make it, given the debris and leaves scattered all over the dirt floor. They pass me and I move, coming around the side of the tree and shooting, the dart landing in the side of one of the hunters' necks. This one, maybe because he was more lean and definitely less built, touched his neck and his eyes widened, before he promptly fell to the ground, completely out of it. His mates gave a shout, seeing me, and I dropped the gun, not wanting to take time to reload, one man racing towards me while the other raised his gun. I jump, the dart moving past me, almost in slow motion as I'm that fast, colliding with the first man and rolling over him. The other man runs and I shoot out my leg, tripping him up, before getting to my knees and piercing his neck, moving behind him and drinking greedily while he flails wildly in my grip, unable to stop me, his comrade staring in horror as I drain his friend completely dry. I licked my lips and let the man drop like a sack of potatoes, my eyes on the last man standing, who is not as brave as his friends, or maybe he's just smarter, who knows, the man backing away, as I stand there watching, wiping the blood from my lips with the back of my hand. I feel re-energized, the blood giving me more strength and satiating the thirst I had. I snarl as the man halts, his whole body shaking, a look of abject terror on his rather plump face. Yes, he stammers, before putting his hands together and begging me, please don't kill me. I won't be a hunter anymore if you let me live. I move my head. How many? I ask softly, feeling anger rising inside of me, letting it build instead of trying to stem it. I welcomed it, let it take over me. I was no longer afraid of anything, that was my vampire aspect coming through. He swallows hard, his eyes darting away. I raise my voice slightly, listening out for the sound of any heartbeats, beside our own, nearby. How many? I repeat. I don't understand, he stammers. How many what? How many of us have you hunted? I don't care whether they were vampire, hybrids, phoenixes, dragons, shifter, s. How many have you hunted? He looks nervous, sweat dripping off his brow. When he speaks, it's in a hushed voice that's croaky and scared. I don't know, over 50 I guess, he says. Just like that, any mercy I may have shown towards the man was gone in an instant. He clearly realized as well, getting up on his feet and trying to run away, his back towards me. The foolish man! He should have known that he couldn't get away, but he tried regardless. I get behind him, my hands coming around his throat as he gasps in shock, pressing them tightly, and then with full force, I break his neck and fling his body into a nearby tree. It stays there, pinned by a sharp branch, for the rest of the hunters to see if there are any more to come, in order to help their fallen men. A warning for them, that I would kill them as well without hesitation. I feel bloodlust pumping through my veins as I take a moment and wonder just how Kai is faring. A quick mind link assures me all is well, that I can still get through if necessary, and I turn back towards the direction I had initially come from. My mouth curves into a wicked grin. It was time to face my mother, and her not-so-dead mate Lexus, who were still by the truck. They were in for a real treat. They would get to see another side to Winter, and my mother would get to see what happened when you screwed people over, especially your own family. I begin to hatch a plan, as I make my way slowly towards the unsuspecting pair of lovebirds. Kai POV. I dashed off to the side, with one last sidelong glance at Winter, reassured that she would be all right. I was certain she could take care of herself, her figure like a blur in the trees. I myself was weaving through the trees, my feet crunching on dead leaves, my body feeling like it was a tornado. It was exhilarating. I sucked in deep breaths of cold air, feeling my heart pumping loudly in my chest. There was something so thrilling about the vampire side of me, the ease of which I was able to draw on it, astonishing. I leapt up high, landing on a branch, taking time to pause and take stock of the heartbeats I could hear, following behind me. 6, all men, I could tell. They had their tranquilizer guns held to their shoulder, eyes scanning the forest for a sign of myself. I smirk, seeing they are walking in teams of 2. They were making this far too easy. Sure, they are organized, both with their backs to each other, but I had thought they would have had some more tricks up their sleeves. Or were they that arrogant, they felt it wasn't necessary? I jumped from tree to tree, my nails digging into the bark. It's like a scene from those Twilight movies, making my way steadily in a zigzag direction. The first team, when I do finally stop, take a while to find me, and as they pass by, I fling myself on top of them, sending both flying to the floor. I smash my fist into the first one's face, rolling backwards and getting to my feet. The other hunter gets up and I do a roundhouse kick, sending him flying into the tree trunk. His comrade shoots and I fall to the ground, the dart flying by. He swears as I turn and grab him by the neck, swinging him widely around and releasing him. His body hits a tree in the distance and makes a sickening crack. He's either dead or broken something serious, because he's not getting back up. I turn back to the first one. He swings his hand at me, and I dodge to the side, grabbing hold and yanking it backwards, dislocating it from his shoulder as he screams. I drop it and then punch him several times in the midsection as he doubles over, before grabbing his hair, twining my fingers in it and biting into his neck ferociously, his hands scrabbling uselessly as I drain him dry, throwing his body to the side. I licked my lips. His blood was tangy but sweet with a hint of bitterness. I feel like I could run 1,000 marathons and still not be out of breath. Plus my thirst, for blood, was now gone. I grab the tranquilizer gun and find the darts in the man's pockets. I give him a vicious kick, before I start to run again, 2 more heartbeats closing in on me. They are persistent, but I'm surprised at the fact there's not many. They must be very arrogant. I know Storm. 2 hybrids and this is all they brought? It's a joke. We still have Elena and Lexus to contend with. I know, she betrayed her own daughter. She's all Winter's, Lexus will be ours, I comment viciously. Storm growls his approval. He too, is feeling bloodthirsty right now, but content to let me hunt down the hunters in my human or rather vampire form. He would get his fight later. I had a feeling Lexus wasn't exactly going to be a piece of cake to beat. We stop, crouching down behind some shrubbery. I load up the tranquilizer gun. I can only shoot one, but this gives me an advantage over the second one at least, if his comrade is down. I gingerly poke the gun between the shrubbery and wait patiently for them to come pass. They are muttering under their breath, but my vampire hearing, more sensitive than shifter hearing, picks up what they are saying. Can't believe we got stuck with this assignment. Lexus being so impatient. I told him we needed more men. He said he could handle it if we failed. The other man scoffs, says he's stronger than a hybrid. I blame that's with him. She has him wrapped around her little finger. Well, at least we get paid well, the first man grumbles, but sometimes it's not enough for what we do. Where do you reckon the others are? The man whispers and they pause, still just out of view, suddenly becoming more cautious. Had they missed their fallen comrades as they came this way? Their footsteps become a little more cautious, softer now, their voices having gone silent as they became aware that my presence must be close by. I watch, waiting, as they slowly come into eyesight, still a fair distance away, but not so far I can't shoot. I line it up, tracking their movements, keeping the gun in line with them, and then, whoosh, I pull the trigger and the dart goes flying, hit the man in the shoulder as he gives a shout. He howls as his mate turns to him wide-eyed, falling to his knees and yanking out the tranquilizer with one hand, wincing at the pain he shot me. He falls face down on the ground, the other hunter nervously looking around, the gun still at his shoulder height, his eyes sweeping from left to right. He leaves the other hunter unconscious, on the ground. I run towards him and he shoots, wildly, startled, the dart missing me by a mile. I smirk, as he pulls out a knife and waves it at me. To me it looks like one of those plastic ones from the toy store, but I know it's real. He thrusts it at me and I dart to the side, giving him a grin. He begins to wave it back and forth, weaving forward as I continue to dodge, side to side, my fist darting out and punching him in the eye. He howls and pauses, stumbling backwards and I knee him in the guts, before punching the side of his head, sending him to his knees. Before he can move, half blind as he is, I move behind him and grab him around the neck, depriving him of oxygen as he tries desperately to claw at me, his nails digging into my skin. I wince but continue, his face slowly turning blue, until his hands hang limply by his sides, his whole body slumping. I drop him and take the knife that's fallen to the ground. I touch the edges and flinch. It is sharp. I glance down at my arms and notice, absently, that the scratches and gouges he made, are already healing. This way I hear a shout, 2 more heartbeats coming directly towards me. I dash forward and hide behind a tree. I grip the knife tightly in one hand. 2 more hunters come into my line of sight, back to back. One bends down and checks the corpse's pulse. Poor is gone, he reports, his voice gruff, his finger tightening on the trigger of his own gun. The other hunter is fairly young, trembling, his grip slack on the trigger. His eyes are wide as he stares down at the body in front of him, looking as though he's about to be sick. He must be a newbie. I feel a pang of sympathy for him. His whole body is starting to shake and it's a miracle he hasn't accidentally pulled the trigger. The older hunter shakes his head at him. Get it together for heaven's sake, he snaps. Christ, God knows why Lexus insisted you had to come along, he murmured. It's almost like he wants to get his son killed. I can't help it, the younger one cries, his blonde hair curled and moving in the breeze. I told father I didn't want to. Did that hunter just say this young one was Lexus's son? If that was the case, then why would he risk him being killed? Would this mean he was Jonathan's half-brother? Was he Winter's half-brother as well? It was mind-boggling. My mind was awhirl with questions. My head was spinning. So many questions. The older hunter makes the mistake of walking past me, his back facing me, and I move, faster than ever, my arm thrusting the knife directly into his neck, before I yank it out. He gives a strange gurgling sound, blood spurting out of his neck and onto the forest floor, the younger hunter turning green as he gives a loud scream. The older hunter's body falls to the floor convulsing. I stare at the younger man, who has already dropped his gun in fright, his body shaking so hard his teeth are chattering. Are you really Lexus's son? I ask coldly, moving towards him. He looks like he's paralyzed, none of his limbs so much as moving as I stop inches in front of him. Why, yeah, yes, he stammers. Please don't kill me, he continues, begging with me. I didn't want to come, but he said it was time I learned to be useful. I eye him carefully. He does look like he's merely a teenager and definitely isn't a young man, now that I look closely. I feel disgusted that Lexus would put his own flesh and blood in danger. He and Elena are cut from the same cloth, that's for sure. What's your name? I ask abruptly and he flushes, looking down at the ground. Simon, he says quietly. My name is Simon. Is your mother Elena? I ask and he nods, looking even worse for wear. She hates me, he mumbles. They both do. Because I'm a terrible fighter, even with shifter blood. I would rather read a book, than go train. I'm pretty sure my father was hoping you would kill me. My lips curl back in contempt. I was fairly certain of the same thing. Do you know the girl that was with me? I say delicately as his body slowly begins to relax. Winter. He shakes his head. I saw her for a moment, he admits, but that's all. She's Elena's daughter, I tell him quietly. Your half-sister, if you're telling the truth. He looks upset. My father wanted you or my own sister to kill me. The irony. How old are you? I ask. He bites his lip. 13, he finally says. My stomach churns. He's still a youngling. I could have murdered a child. He was barely a teenager. He was tall for one though, which made him appear older. 13, I say in disbelief. You have no business being here at all. He hangs his head. I think my father wants rid of me. I was going to try and run away tomorrow and he must have found out, because next thing I know he makes me come here and forces me to hunt. Why are you running away? Because I wanted to tell someone, another alpha, about the warehouse and the experiments the hunters are doing on different supernatural races. He says, steadily looking at me. I believe him, he looks so earnest and his voice is sincere. Lexus must have been pissed when he found out his own son was going to betray him. You were going to do the right thing, I say, uncomfortable when I see tears shimmering in his eyes. I glance around at the forest. Winter mind links me quickly and assures me that she's all right and headed towards her mother and Lexus. I put a hand on Simon's shoulder. We need to go, I say. You're coming with me. Can you follow orders? I add and he nods, his eyes flashing with hope. Good, I grin, because in a few minutes, you're about to see your sister in action. I just need to know one thing. Will you get in the way of us killing your father? He hesitates, then shakes his head, curls bouncing. I want him dead. He's a horrible man, he says thickly, a catch in his throat. He deserves to die. Can you lead us to the warehouse? I ask, imagining the dreadful building in my mind. He grimaces. They kept me blindfolded the whole time we were traveling, he says hoarsely as we walk. I wouldn't have the first clue how to get back. But Elena, my mother, knows where it is. Does she now? I say casually. I guess we better not kill her then. I mind link Winter and begin to include her in on the plan. Winter POV. I take my time, savoring the feeling of power coursing through my veins. Kai's mind linked me and I'm disgusted that my mother would take part in such a thing, not to mention the brief feeling of euphoria at finding out I had a half-brother. Too bad that Simon grew up raised by Elena and Lexus. His childhood was the worst of all and he was still a child, barely a teenager. I longed to throw my arms around him, but that would have to wait. I had to deal with my mother and her mate first. I get close and can hear them speaking, moving my head. My mother is grimacing. We should have brought more hunters, Lexus. I warned you that winter was strong. So is that mate of hers. There's more on the way. Lexus snaps, and neither of them will be stronger than me. I've defeated alphas before, I can defeat a hybrid. There's nothing to it, he boasts. I raise an eyebrow. Someone sure is arrogant. But I don't hear anything, Mother frets, pacing back and forth, a scowl on her face. What if they've all been taken down? Lexus gives a snort. A dozen hunters brought down by 2 hybrids? Not likely, Elena. Stop being such a worrywart, he murmurs. They're probably busy chasing them. The cowards are probably hiding, that's all. My men are professionals, they'll be fine. My mother huddles into his arms. What a cozy scene, I think to myself sarcastically. I give a glance around, but Kai's still on the way back. I decide not to wait. I walk out, with a wide smile on my face, smirking at the startled looks of my mother and Lexus. What? Lexus growls, sniffing the air. His eyes widen. Where are my men? He demands, stepping sideways and regarding me warily. Now he doesn't look so arrogant. Oh, I say casually, either dead or unconscious. It was real nice of you to send me a blood supply, I kind of needed it, I hiss, and he gulps while Mother turns pale. That's not possible, no one's ever gotten the best of my hunters, Lexus counters, his eyes turning pitch black. Man, does he look pissed, and I relish it. I can smell Mother's fear from where I stand, and it smells wonderful. I shrug. Wasn't hard, in fact, it was almost too easy, I growl. They weren't exactly hard to overpower. Weaklings, the whole lot of them, I snarl, folding my arms. My mother gives a gasp. What's wrong, Mother? I query, turning towards her and moving my head. Didn't think I would manage it. Or maybe you're afraid of what I'm going to do to you, for your betrayal? I must say that Damien in particular, will be more than glad to have you gone completely from our lives. She shivers but glares, her face completely cold and livid. As if you might be powerful, but together, Lexus and I are unstoppable, she declares. We've beaten every single creature we've come across, and that's all you are. She sniffs. A horrible, disgusting creature that needs to be put down. Ouch. Words hurt. But I maintain my angry expression. I harden my heart. I can't allow myself to become weak from the words she flings at me. Except that winter is not alone, cuts in a furious voice, and Kai steps out, looking determined, every inch of him drenched in sweat and blood. Even so, I swoon a little. What girl doesn't, when her mate looks that good? I see you managed to best the hunters that were after you as well, snarls Lexus, curling his lips. I guess that means that you get to face off with me. Kai gives me a small nod. Mother, looking a bit frightened now, and frantic, turns and shifts in one fell swoop, a grey wolf with black stripes across her, running away from our small group, as though her life depends on it. Well, I guess it kind of does, I muse. I barely even give Lexus a glance, shifting into my own wolf, my paws thudding against the dirt and foliage as I follow her mad dash into the woods. The chase was on. She's fast, for a wolf. A lot faster than I would have anticipated, commented Sabriel in my mind. I see that too. But, Sabriel, what if she experimented on herself? To make herself faster? That would explain this speed of hers, wouldn't it? It would, but I don't understand how she could turn against her own kind like that. Money, Sabriel, it all comes down to money. That's all that's ever mattered to her. It must have infuriated her that her real mate, father, couldn't make any and gambled or drank it away. It's disgraceful. Money is no reason to become such a horrid person. Thank goodness you are nothing like her Winter, or Damien, or even Drake for that matter. We're all thankful for that, Sabriel, don't you worry. Now remember, we can't kill her. No, but we can well cause her some serious damage. For everything she's done. Show no mercy, Sabriel growls, and I agree, letting her take full control. Sabriel wanted to fight, her rage easy to feel, and I wasn't about to get in her way. Not when she was this determined and bloodthirsty. We come to a large clearing and Mother swerves to the side, but Sabriel jumps and prevents her from continuing, her jaw wide open in a snarl. Mother's wolf glares, hackles rising, snarling at an unconcerned Sabriel who advances slowly as Mother backs away. Mother leaps into the air and Sabriel jumps to meet her, both wolves crashing into each other, frantically biting and clawing. Sabriel manages to dislocate the other wolf's shoulder, making her howl loudly as she crashed to the floor. Unfortunately, Mother's wolf seems unfazed and gets up on shaky feet, racing into the nearby tree and popping the limb back into place with a loud popping sound. She turns and faces us. Sabriel gives a low growl. Our own wounds merely consist of some grazes and scrapes. Flesh wounds, nothing major. Mother darts towards us and we dodge to the side, turning around and clawing at her back as she yelps. She turns, eyes narrowed, panting heavily. While she's a fairly tall wolf, we're much bigger, and have the advantage. She tries to back away and Sabriel jumps, cutting off her escape and swinging her paw up, scratching Mother's wolf across one eye and effectively partially blinding her. She snarls, Sabriel advancing, jumping on top of her, biting deep into her neck, but not enough to break it, shaking her head wildly and sending Mother into a nearby tree, making it fall to the ground, along with her. Sabriel stays still, sniffing the air. The smell of blood is strong, from both of us, and we can smell hers. Mother's blood smells slightly off somehow, definitely not just like a shifter's. It's too metallic, for one. Like something has been added to it. Something unnatural. It's not vampire blood either. Mother's wolf gets to her feet, swaying slightly and looking very unbalanced. The wolf is covered in blood that's trickling down from several wounds. Sabriel doesn't wait for her to move, lowering her head and crashing into the other wolf, head on, swiping her paws across the wolf's midsection. Sabriel rips open her fur and blood begins to drip down, trickling onto the forest floor and staining it a bright red. The wolf is barely standing now, and then with a groan and a low hiss, it falls down, scrabbling weakly at the floor. She's too injured to continue fighting. There's the loud sound of bones breaking and shifting, before Mother lies before Sabriel and I, doubled over and crying, hand clutching at her stomach. Winter, she sobs, holding out a trembling hand towards me and my wolf. Please, I'm your mother, she whispers. I shift, Sabriel reluctantly giving me back control, staring at the woman with nothing but utter contempt in my eyes. You are not my mother, I tell her evenly, staying back and eyeing her angrily. You never have been. Where is the location of the warehouse where you perform your experiments? Where you give up the shifters and anything else you catch? She shakes her head. I can't tell you, she coughs. I won't tell you. Big mistake. But there's something else that's on my mind and bothering me. If I have to torture her to find the location, I will, but right now, I needed to hear something else from her. What about Simon? I shout, incensed at her as she blinks up at me, one eye almost completely shut and scratched over. Did you even care about him at all? He's your son and you sent him out to hunt us, I growl, shaking my head. Why? She laughs, derisively. Because he's cut from the same cloth as you and your brother Damien. She spits out blood, Lexus, and I knew what he was about to do. Why do you think he's here? He was supposed to die by yours or Kai's hand. Let me guess, she continues to chuckle, weakly. Kai was too soft-hearted to do it. Figures, she exhales, sounding disappointed more than anything. All my children are such a disappointment, she mutters. I shoot out my leg and kick her, enjoying hearing her gasp and then moan in pain. Her hair is covered in dirt, leaves stuck in it. It looks like a dark brown, rather than its original cover, and her whole body is covered in bruises and scratches. I squat next to her. You are a despicable and horrible human being, I tell her quietly, my body trembling in indignation. Simon deserves a better parent than you. I'm giving you one last chance to tell me the location, I warn her, picking up some of her hair and yanking it hard before I have to do something I don't want to. Her one good eye looks at me. It's gleaming, her lips curving in a small sickening smile. Do what you have to, she coughs, because I'll never talk. I would never betray Lexus in that way. It would be sweet, if it wasn't so sad. The only things that mattered to her, money and Lexus. I move slowly, quietly, behind her, my hands moving to squeeze her throat as she gasps and tries to scratch at me. But she's weak. From being so heavily wounded, her flailing and scratching barely even breaking the skin as I tighten my grip. But I'm also careful. I remember Kai's warning, that we needed her. We couldn't afford for Mother to die, not just yet anyway. Her lips turn blue and slowly her body stops shaking. I let go, checking to see that she has a pulse. It's weak, but steady. Good. She's not dead then, merely unconscious. I sigh. The next step was going to be the worst thing I've ever done, but some part of me didn't care. We need answers, Mother has them. I would do what was necessary. There could be shifters and other supernatural creatures in need of rescuing. I would make sure to remember that, and continue to harden my heart. I mind-link Kai, who is busy fighting Lexus, and bent down, picking up the limp body of Mother, cradling her to my chest. She's light as a feather, thanks to my strength. I glance down at my nude body with a grimace. Man, it's freezing, and now I would have to freeze me until I got home. I stare down at Mother resentfully. My feet crunch on the ground. I hear a wheezing sound and turn, startled, to see a young teenage boy with blonde curls looking at me, his hands held up in surrender. I'm Simon, he says quietly. Kai sent me to help you. I can carry her, if you want to go to Kai, he offers. I stare at him in fascination. He looks so much like myself and Mother. A mixture of us both, with the tiniest hint of that Lexus guy. This is my half-brother. Not to mention Jonathan's half-brother, and Damien's, and Drake's. He looks shy, but has kind eyes. I melt towards him, trying not to smile when I notice he's blushing and looking away. He hurriedly takes off his camouflage jacket and hands it to me. I give over Mother, seeing with approval that, despite his age, he's able to carry her. He's quite tall too. Thanks, I mutter, putting the jacket on. It goes to my knees, due to his being taller than me. I appreciate it. We begin to walk. Are you really my sister? He blurts out. We hear a scream in the distance, one that sounds like it's coming from Lexus. I guess so, I say, turning to him, and I would like to get to know you better. I promise I'm nothing like our mother. He looks relieved, me neither, he admits as the truck comes into view. Now what? He adds, and I smirk, gesturing for him to put Mother on the floor of the back of the truck. Now we wait for Kai, I say, leaning against the truck and folding my arms. Something tells me he'll be here soon. Kai POV Lexus shifts. The second after his so-called mate, Elena has gone running, as though winter won't catch up with her. I shift into my wolf as well, chasing after him as he streaks into the forest. He dodges and weaves, jumps high over fallen branches. His wolf is large, almost larger than my own, but then he too, from memory, is an alpha, even if he had gone rogue. It's black with white streaks across him. Reminds me of an overblown zebra. But one that's deadly, rather than cute and cuddly. I thought he would stay and face us, coward, growls Storm, annoyed. He's feeling extremely indignant. He's leading us away from his mate. I bet he thinks he can easily take us alone. Something is off about him, Storm. We need to be wary of him. His scent is strange. You're telling me? He smells disgusting, like a wild animal from the woods. Like part of him is something else. Do you think he's a hybrid? God knows. Wouldn't surprise me if he'd been arrogant enough to experiment on himself. Well, I'm tired of playing chasey, let's get this showdown started already. Go for it, Storm. We dart in front of him, halting him in his tracks, Lexus's wolf growling and snapping his jaws together, saliva dripping from his mouth. His eyes are red, like a rogue's, and he smells repugnant. My stomach churns even as we stare him down. He tries to tackle us head-on and we dart sideways, swiping at him, our claws connecting with his flesh and cutting deep into this side. He howls, as we turn back around, stomping his paws on the floor in a furious rage. I jump, but he rolls away and then tries to swipe, my reflexes kicking in, as I too roll, in the opposite direction. I get to my feet and turn, ducking just in time to avoid yet another swipe aimed at my face. He lightly grazes my side with his claws as I growl at him. Another jump, and this time I meet him halfway, kicking and pawing as we hit the ground, my jaws clamping down on his upper arm and yanking, breaking it as I let go and move backwards. Lexus lets out a whimper. For an alpha I would have expected more. But to my shock, he seems to almost heal instantly, and now his bones are cracking and moving. Surely he's not trying to turn into a human? But he seems to be getting larger, not smaller, right in front of my very eyes. I stare in disbelief. He's definitely been experimenting on himself, Storm. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Oh yeah. Kai, this changes everything. I thought his wolf was weaker than it should be, something tells me that is stronger than his wolf. We can do this, Storm. We just have to work together. Right, let's just try not to get killed. Such optimism, buddy, that's why I love you. Lexus's body ripples all over, his fur growing and turning into a dark muddy brown, his paws extending and his claws growing longer and larger. His body becomes fatter, more plump, and his head grows bigger, along with his snout. He stands on two legs, rather than on all fours. His eyes turn a beady black, squinting down at us, our form a lot smaller than his now. Instead of being in wolf form, he'd grown and turned into a large bear. It was astonishing to watch and I felt sick to my stomach. He let out a ferocious roar as I blinked at him. I'm forced to back away slightly as he comes towards me, his claws swiping furiously across as he tries to strike me. He looks a little unbalanced, swaying on his feet, and I hope, rather fervently, that it could be because he's not used to using this body. He gets on all fours and races towards me. We get out of the way, just in time, the bear turning around and bowling us over. I kick out and send him flying backwards, rolling onto my stomach and getting up, wincing from the pain of his sharp claws, which had pierced and scratched my abdomen. I hiss, glaring at the bear which races towards me yet again. He's not giving up easy. I turn and dart around the trees. I need a new strategy. The bear lumbers behind me, extremely quick for such a large creature. My legs furiously pump as I run, dodging trees and debris. Jackpot! A tree that looks dangerously close to falling is close by. I have an idea in the back of my mind, one that's dangerous and requires being light-footed and agile. Storm is nervous. Rightfully so. If this doesn't work, we'll have to come up with a new plan. The bear comes into view as I position myself, tensing my whole body, my fur on end, panting heavily from the exertion of running so fast. This has to work, I think to myself grimly, it just has to. Lexus spots me. A sickening smile comes onto his disgustingly furry face, he gets on all fours and races towards me, his paws making heavy thudding sounds on the dirt floor. I tense even harder, my eyes keeping track of his form, so fast Lexus is like a blur as he darts towards me. At the very last possible second, I move to the side, getting out of the way as he hits the trunk of the tree. It makes a sickening crack noise as he hits it, and then as I move, quickly, it falls onto his stunned body, eliciting a large growl from him as his body collapses underneath the weight of it. But is he fatally injured? Or even injured at all? Whoosh! The tree trunk gets thrown off of Lexus and he gets on his feet, stumbling around. There's the sound of sickening cracks, his fur beginning to descend, if that's the way to describe it, until he's now a wolf, but a badly injured one. He flops to the ground. I'm not about to fall for any tricks though, and I keep my body tensed, prepared to jump or run with a second's notice. I can smell the blood on his fur, the metallic taste putrid. I half expect to see the body healing itself, like before, but that doesn't happen. Instead he makes the most despairing howl I've ever heard come from a wolf, and then his body begins to break, his bones shifting and readjusting, until he lies there, in his human form, head slumped down, blood pooling around his body. I shift, coming close. He looks up and coughs, spitting out blood. Why haven't you healed? Or started healing? I ask grimly. Even his shifter side wasn't healing him. He grins, looking like a maniac, his hair disheveled and drenched in blood, his eyes still glowing that hateful red color that all rogues possess. If I get hurt in my bare form, I stay hurt, he laughs. Isn't that ironic? I wanted strength and got it, but as a result I'm also weaker in other aspects. I say nothing, just study the man for a moment. It's sickening what he's done, from leaving Jonathan's mother, to trying to kill his own son, let alone the experiments that he'd no doubt partaken in when he'd hunted down his own species, not to mention others. This man did not deserve to live. I couldn't let him live. What are you waiting for? He sneers, lips curling as he regards me. Don't be so pathetic. If it was you, I would have killed you already. I have no doubts of that. None at all. I merely raise an eyebrow. What about your mate? Or your son? Do you have any feelings at all towards them? He laughs, weakly, coughing towards the end. I have regrets. Him still isn't dead. I can smell his scent and you evidently know he's my son. As for Elena, he pauses and a wistful look comes on his face. I love that woman, with all my heart. She's the only one who's ever really understood me. She's a gem, she is, he adds. I step on his arm, making him swear at me. I grin and look down, pressing down hard as he writhes in agony. Where is the warehouse or whatever it is that you take your prey to? He blinks and then smiles slowly. That's what you want. He turns and spits. I'll go to hell before I tell you. I bend down and grab his arm, bending it backwards and breaking it. He screams wildly, then falls silent again. Are you going to tell me? I ask before pointedly looking down at his legs. Because you have plenty of limbs for me to break, I taunt. Go to hell, he coughs. You and that mate of yours. I stomp on his leg, crushing it as he yells out in frustration. This is strangely satisfying. I stomp again, enjoying his yells and shouts. Feel like talking? He just shakes his head. I really don't think this is going to go anywhere. He's never going to talk. Our best option lies with Elena. Of the two, she's the weaker. More likely to tell. It doesn't hurt to try though, Storm. Because we both know what happens if he doesn't speak. Winter will have to drag her mother back to the pack and get the information out of her. I want to spare her that. Stop thinking Winter can't handle things, Kai. She's strong, fearless and one hell of a warrior. You do her a disservice when you think she needs to be spared or saved from certain things. You know what, Storm? You are 100% right. I need to stop thinking of her as the weaker one. She's stronger than me, I just don't want to admit it. Still think you need to put a ring on it. Are you seriously pushing that on me right now? Yep. Any chance he gets, he mentions the word marriage or ring to me. One thing at a time. I stomp on Lexus's foot, crushing and breaking several toes. He manages to breathe out. His pallor is pale, his lips are turning blue and the blood continues to pool around his body. It doesn't take a genius to work out that he's dead in a minute or two, no matter what I do to him. I decide to show him some form of mercy. I yank his head up, holding his hair and then, with gritted teeth, use my hands to turn his head and break his neck. I drop his body to the floor and sigh. So much for getting what I needed. A coop mind link with Winter, however, confirms she's waiting for me. I race back towards the truck, my vampire speed making me feel exhilarated. Within minutes, I'm back on the track, staring at a very cool and bemused Winter, alongside a very nervous Simon. You took your time, she purrs. I shrug. I was trying to get the information we needed, I say evenly, my wounds healing themselves as we speak. I feel invigorated, rejuvenated. She just huffs and moves. I see Elena on the floor of the back of the truck, unconscious. Well, we have Mother to deal with, she says sarcastically. She wasn't so forthcoming either. What did you do with Lexus? She adds. Left him back there dead, I say, and then it hits me. I could at least have the decency to bring him back as well. Jonathan deserved the right to bury his father properly. I'll go back and get him, I grumble as Winter snickers. You have a good heart, she tells me, pecking me on the cheek. I love you. But hurry up, apparently there's more hunters on the way and I want to get on the road before they get here. Fine, I mutter, give me 2 minutes. It took 5 before we were pretty much throwing the body in with Elena. Simon had disengaged the tracking device on the truck and clambered into the back, looking a little green as he shut the door. I got into the passenger side while Winter got into the driver's seat. We both look at each other. Let's go, we say in unison, and Winter starts the truck. Jonathan POV. I met him in the darkness, my heart hammering wildly in my chest. I had never expected to receive such a phone call, and for a moment I pause, grateful for once, that my mother hadn't picked up the phone. Otherwise I would have had to placate her, calm her down when she became a furious tornado of emotion. Instead, I had been the one to pick up the phone, curious to see what it was that Alpha Chi had wanted. The second he'd told me, I'd torn out of there, informing Mason he was in charge and that the rogues we'd accepted into the pack were to be put in the dungeon, no excuses. I didn't have time to explain why. My footsteps were heavy as I paused, Kai's eyes grim and his expression tight. He looked tired, his shoulders slumped as he met me halfway. Jonathan, he says quietly, I wish we could have met again under different circumstances. I give a barely indecipherable nod. Are you certain that it's him? I asked that she wasn't lying when she said his name. I half hope that he's mistaken. I'd given up long ago caring for such a man, especially one that had abandoned me, all in the name of another woman he found far more important than being with his family. She called him Lexus, Kai confirms as we stand there, looking at the closed-in fridge that houses corpses in the morgue. A label merely reads Lexus in front of me and I shudder, anticipating what I might find, once I have the guts to open it. Kai looks guiltily at me. I'm sorry, he apologizes as I glance at him in surprise. If I could have brought him back alive, I would have. I shake my head. From what Kai had told me, my father had been experimenting with shifter blood or genes. He'd shifted into a dangerous bear, for heaven's sake. It was a miracle Kai had lived, it was nothing to me that my father hadn't. He'd made his choice, and he'd paid the consequences for it. You did what you had to, Alpha Chi, I murmur. There are no apologies necessary. I take a deep breath and reach out with slightly trembling fingers, opening the door to the refrigerator up and pulling the body on its tray towards me. I glance down and stiffen. I've seen many photographs of my father, since I was a child, but I still remembered certain things. Like the way his hair was shaggy or the way his eyes gleamed. How strong and tall he'd been, a giant, in comparison to a tiny child's height. I can also smell the blood in the air, the heavy metallic taste of it on my tongue, and I gag, slowly pushing the body back in and shutting the door hastily, swearing under my breath. Part of me wishes Kai had just left him in the woods, for the animals to feast on, but I knew my mother would want a burial for him. Even after everything he'd done to her, she still harbored feelings of love for him. It explained why she'd been so mad at Elena when she discovered who she was. I considered deceiving my mother, or never telling her, but she deserved some form of closure. Perhaps, once this was over and done with, and father was in the ground, she might at least consider the thought of finding a new mate. One that would love her as much as I did, or rather more. It was a hope I would hold on to for now. What do you want to do? Kai asks. I take a deep breath and exhale slowly. Keep him in the fridge for now, I tell him calmly. I believe we have other things more important to take care of first. This child Simon, is mine and Winter's half-brother. I ask, my voice thick. I have always wanted a sibling, but not like this. Still, I would not blame Simon for his parents or his upbringing. I was more curious about him than anything else. He is, and Damien's and Drake's, Kai says, turning away, while I stepped beside him, both of us starting to slowly walk away and up the stairs leading from the morgue. He seems like a sweet child. Despite everything he's been through. He resembles Winter a lot more than anyone else, he adds. Good. It meant I wouldn't be staring at a reminder of father's face when I met him. How old is he again? I check. He smiles sadly. 13. They sent him hunting to get him killed, he mutters, and it failed. I would never have killed a child that young, neither would have Winter. Fools, he scoffs. I have to agree. I badly want to meet Simon, but there's also the other concern to take care of. So if Elena has been a hunter with Lexus all these years, I say slowly, they must have killed dozens of shifters and other supernatural races. Hundreds even. How did we all miss this? Kai sighs. They were careful. They took those passing through. How many shifters have left, looking for their mates and never been heard from again? A lot of the times it was assumed they had met their mate and not sent word back. Other times, shifters were banished and we assumed had gone rogue, when in actual fact, a lot of them were snatched up by hunters. As for other supernatural races, he shrugs, it's not like we're all on good terms with one another. Something, that I realize, must change in order to prevent this happening again. I scowl. He's right. We're especially not on good terms with vampires, but here Kai and Winter were half vampires now. We needed to stop thinking we were superior to other races. We needed to start communicating with each other and possibly start thinking about the possibilities of treaties with one another. It was time to let go of all our prejudices and start welcoming the other ones. It's going to be difficult, I warn him, but he looks determined. Maybe, but it's not worth always being on our own against one another, he says as we make our way down the hospital hallways. We should be helping each other, not fighting amongst each other. I heartily agree. I take it Winter feels the same. I ask, already anticipating the answer. She does, he answers, as does Drake and Damien. Langdon is neutral, but I feel that's because he's never met another race, besides Winter and myself, he chuckles. Where is this so-called warehouse where they've been taking the prisoners that they've hunted? I ask eagerly. My men were waiting for my instructions, and I had been told that King Axel was also amassing a small army to help rescue anyone that may still be alive. Kai looks frustrated. Lexus wouldn't divulge the information before he died, he said with a sidelong glance at me, and trust me, I tried to get it out of him. I didn't want Winter to have to get it out of Elena. I felt that was more than reasonable. I narrow my eyes as we step outside, shivering slightly in the cool air. So what exactly is Winter up to at the moment? His hair billows around him in the wind. His lips curl back in disgust. Right now, he says quietly, she's busy trying to get the information out of her dear old mother. She has a lot to answer for, he sneers, and something tells me Winter's not exactly going to hold back this time. He looks slightly upset when he says that, and I know he's feeling sorry for his mate and what she's having to go through, but at the same time, I feel like he should be proud of how far Winter has come. Winter is a far cry from the girl I met in school and rejected. Her inner strength shines through. Her kindness, her loyalty, her unwavering love for Kai. Everything about her is strong. She might have gone through hell since I rejected her, but she'd risen up and overcome all her obstacles, all that had been thrown at her, and she'd come out stronger than ever. Part of me will always regret the fact I rejected her, but another part of me hopes that by doing so, I led her on a path that made her discover who she was, and what she was capable of. It might sound like I'm being smug, but the truth is, I will always love Winter, and I will always have a soft spot in my heart for her. Not to mention, it doesn't look like we're destined to be apart from one another, not when we now share a half-sibling. We will always be good friends, but never anything more. Her heart is reserved for Kai, and I'm envious that he has someone like her that loves him like crazy. I pray one day, I'll have a mate that looks at me, the way Winter constantly looks at her beloved Kai. Where are Damien and Drake? I ask, our footsteps crunching softly on the grass and fallen leaves. He sighs. In the dungeon with Winter. Langdon is home. Damien and Drake insisted he get some rest before we have to move out. A family affair then, in torturing Elena. I shiver. I would not like to be in her shoes right now, with 3 pissed-off children of hers, determined to get the information they need. Kai, I say steadily, making him look at me, I'm here to help you and Winter, that's all. But the thing is, we now also share a sibling, a half-brother, and there is every possibility I may want to take him back with me, and that would be my right, I say firmly, folding my arms across my chest and narrowing my eyes at him. He stiffens for a moment, glaring at me, before his eyes soften and he glances around, staring up at the sky, his jaw ticking for a moment. You are just as in the right as Winter and her brothers are to keep him here, he says steadily. I won't force Simon to do anything he doesn't want to do, and I won't make Winter make the decision, he adds. Simon is old enough to decide where he wants to go, but I do ask you, he pauses, as though trying to pick his words delicately, what it is you would want from him? Would you punish him for being half Elena's? I'm incredulous that he would even ask that. Like I'm such a poor that I would punish Simon for being part Elena's. No way. I shake my head profusely. You misunderstand me, I tell Kai thickly, a lump in my throat. There is a reason I would want Simon to come back to my pack, besides wanting to get to know him. I would like him to become the second in line to be alpha in case anything ever happens to me. Isn't that what your beta is for? Kai growls and I sigh. Usually, but you know that's because I had no siblings. Now I do. You would do the same if you had a brother, I point out, and his eyes flash. Bingo. Fine, he mutters. Simon makes his own choices, but now I know that you do want him. Shall we go find Winter now, he says, making his pace even quicker as I rush to catch up. I grin. Looks like I won the small argument. Now I would have to hope I could convince Simon, when I did get to meet him, to let me take him home with me. The only thing that concerns me, as we make our way down to the dungeon, is how Mother will react to him and whether she would fully be able to accept him, knowing that he's born from Elena and Lexus. I would find out, I vowed to myself, because Simon was my brother and I wasn't going to keep away, in order to spare her feelings. As much as I loved my mother, she was going to have to come to terms with it, or risk losing me in the process. The sounds of screams fill my ears and I cringe as Kai opens the door to the dungeon, his eyes scanning the darkness. Watch your step, he mutters, and whatever you do, keep your mouth shut or you, LOL, make her lose her concentration.